welcome to your equine education video. Today we're going to talk about how to decide when to call the vet. That's a big question. We always want to make sure we err on the side of caution and call the vet sooner rather than later before it's too late, but we don't want to just call the vet willy-nilly because it's expensive. Veterinarians generally charge a call-out fee of a couple $100 just to come on property. So that's even before treating your horse for anything. So do we want to call them for every tiny little scratch and nick? No, because we're going to run out of money before we even get to riding our horse. But if you can see Mr. Stoley here, he's got a slinky on, but he's got a bandage underneath. Stoley's had some vet care this week, so he seemed like the perfect demo pony. Stoley, he had an abscess in his tooth. He broke a tooth, but then he got a sinus infection. So he has a drain, flushing his whole face. So is that something that we could deal with at home? No, an abscessed tooth, we actually had to have him go to the clinic, have the tooth removed, and they had to put this whole drain in here, and he's on antibiotics. So that's something that he needed vet care for. He feels very sorry for himself. He wants extra snuggles. He says, this is no fun, guys. I didn't like having to have the vet called, right? Good boy. There's lots of other times where we would and wouldn't call the vet. So for minor scrapes and injuries, remembering from our video before, those are punctures that are minor, tears that are not needing sutures, little nicks, girth rubs, things like that, or minor cases of colic, we probably don't need to call the veterinarian. But things that get more severe, like our severe cases of colic that don't resolve just from 10 minutes of hand walking, if our horse has arterial bleeding. Now, how do we tell if it's arterial bleeding? Well, that's blood where it's spurting out. It spurts with the heartbeat. That is an urgent vet call. If our horse is dead lame and super injured, we have to decide, does he look like he has an abscess or is there something significant going on? Because if he's that lame and there's no abscess, it could tell us he's either done a tendon or maybe broken a bone, which is very significant, requires urgent care, or anytime we feel like the situation is out of our control or our ability to care for. Or if our horse has an infection that requires more than just cleaning to maintain. If our horse requires antibiotics or pain medicine, we're going to need to call the veterinarian for that. You just want all the attention to be on you because it's been a hard week. It's a hard week, guys. Having to have the vet out is definitely expensive, but it's also hard on our horses. As you can tell from Stoley, he needs extra love because he feels extra sorry for himself. Yeah, we do, don't we? We feel extra sorry for ourselves. So, to recap, when do we call the vet? Well, if your horse came, we're going to go through some situations, came in from the paddock and has a big flap of skin hanging from their neck. What do you guys think? Should we call the vet? Yes? No? What do you think? Well, probably yes, because I don't know about you guys, but I can't do sutures on my horse without any freezing or any of the proper material. So we will need a veterinarian to come out and do that. But when we call the vet, they're going to ask us things like, is it urgent? Is our horse needing stitches urgent? Well, it might feel urgent to us because these are our babies, but that's not an emergency call. They will have to come out that day. You don't want to wait more than a couple hours, but that is not an emergency. If my horse is severely colicking, rolling, thrashing, he won't get up, walking him hasn't helped, is that an emergency? What do you guys think? Yes or no? You're not being helpful. Yes, that is, because colic, as we've learned from our previous videos, is a very serious condition, and if they're left and continue to roll, their intestines can fold, and that can result in either death of the horse or needing an emergency surgery, which is the upward of $5,000. So that is an emergency. What if my pony comes in and he's a little bit lame? He's got a little limp going. I don't see any blood, but he does seem uncomfortable. Do I call the vet? Yes or no? What do you guys think? Well, that one is where we have to start doing our own kind of honest research. How comfortable am I to deal with this situation? If he's a little bit lame, it could be a multitude of things. It could be a little abscess brewing, or it could be he had a stone bruise, where he's got a little bruise on his hoof from stepping on a rock. Does that seem urgent? Probably not. Or it could be a multitude of other things. He could have been kicked. He could have had anything go wrong with him. So we need to be a little bit of a detective and rule through the basic things first. If we don't find anything basic, then we probably should call a veterinarian. But again, that wouldn't be an emergency. That's not an emergency, is it? You're very snuggly. What about if we come into my horse's paddock and there's blood all over and there's blood spurting out of my horse's leg? What do you guys think? Should we call the vet? Yes? No? Yes, and that one would be an emergency because our horses could bleed to death. An arterial bleed is very serious. Now, what should we do in the meantime for that? Because that one seems very life-threatening, doesn't it? And it can take the vets at least a half an hour to get to you. Well, we would put on, just like with people first aid, a tourniquet. What's a tourniquet? Something to stop the bleeding, stop the pressure. So we would put on a belt or a really tight bandage above the injury. So for example, with Stoli, you're gonna be our demo pony for all the vet stuff today. He looks like Batman in his little thing, doesn't he, guys? Isn't that fun? So if he was spurting from his lower limbs, we would put something really tight around his upper limbs. Oh no, he says, guys, I'm injured. Apparently I'm injured. And then we would put a pressure bandage over the wound itself. So up here would restrict the blood flow coming down, and the pressure bandage would hopefully stop from spurting out too much further. And then as he bleeds through that, which if it takes your veterinarian a little while to get there, will happen, you don't remove the base layer, you remove the other soaked through layers and add more for the pressure bandage. Otherwise, if you pull off the base layer, as any of you guys know, if you've put on, maybe used toilet paper or something to hold a wound, as soon as you pull it off, you pull off the scab and it's gonna restart the whole bleed and scabbing process again. So that would be urgent. Other things we need to call the veterinarian for are our routine care things for our horse. So things like their teeth, their shots, all of those maintenance things that we do for our horses. But again, those are non-emergency things that we schedule. So these are some instances where we would call a vet, wouldn't call a vet, and how to decide if they're urgent or not. Thanks for following along.